Hey everybody, welcome to Adapter Parish, episode 32, The Hunt for Red October. As always, before we dive in, let's talk about our next episode. So this is our big Christmas episode, but it would hardly be a Christmas season if Santa didn't make an appearance, and in the next episode of Adapter Parish, Father Christmas does just that. He makes a single appearance to deliver weapons to children. That's right, we're talking about C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We read the book, we watched the 70s cartoon, the 80s BBC series, and the 2000s movie. That episode will be out on New Year's Day. And if your New Year's Eve is anything like ours, you'll have been in bed since 9 and feeling incredibly well rested. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com or tweet at us using the AdaptCast hashtag. And with that, on with the show. Tom Clancy's The Hunt for Red October. Hello and welcome to Adapter Parish, a podcast about adaptation. My name is Jeremy Latour.
And I'm Arielle Lipshaw. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Are you excited about this episode? This is our Christmas episode.
I know. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Happy Hanukkah. Happy Diwali. I think that's in the spring.
Diwali.
No, I think it's pronounced Diwali.
Is it?
I think so.
Oh, no.
Maybe we should take this part out. Oh, God.
No, I feel
Let's be culturally insensitive to everyone.
I wanna just go headlong into this. I want to explain why our Christmas episode is The Hunt for Red October.
Yes, I am also interested as to why that might be.
So can you, I would love to ask, what was your introduction to this movie?
You said to me when we were first dating.
Because when was our first date?
The day after Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, you should really watch my favorite Christmas movie. I can't believe you haven't seen it. And I said, explain.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here is, I realized that I had been watching this movie at Christmas for like 1 or 2 years, and I had to kind of figure out why it was a Christmas movie in retrospect.
Go ahead.
So, it is a movie about this big guy with a lot of authority and a big white beard from the frozen north who has a mode of transportation that defies tracking by even the most advanced systems of nations of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point of the movie is that he's coming to the United States to bring us a present. That's how this is a Christmas movie.
I'm willing to go with you in as much as I'm sitting here recording this episode that we have jointly decided. I want to be clear. Last year's Christmas episode was A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
This year's Christmas episode is The Hunt for Red October.
Well, we're not going to do A Christmas Carol again.
Yes, and in the spirit of Glasnost and Perestroika, I am sitting here, I am drinking tea. Which, as we all know, is very culturally Russian. In the Russian culture, they drink
just tea, right?
No, because again, this is détente. This is brotherhood of two nations coming together. So I have into the tea placed American bourbon.
Oh, good.
It's very good.
I'm sure it is. But Merry Christmas, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Celebrate with us as we talk about Tom Clancy's The Hunt for Red October. So for those people who don't know what this story is about, would you like to read the back of the book?
I would, yes. I have here a paperback copy of Tom Clancy's The Hunt for Red October. This is the film tie-in edition. What year did this film come out?
The book came out in 1984. The movie came out in 1990.
Okay, so this is a vintage 1990 copy of Tom Clancy's The Hunt for Red October. Okay. Over 5 million copies in print. Somewhere under the Atlantic, a Soviet sub-commander has just made a fateful decision. The Red October is heading west. The Americans want her, the Russians want her back, and the most incredible chase in history is on. Here is the runaway bestseller that launched Tom Clancy's phenomenal career. A military thriller so gripping in its action and so convincing in its accuracy that the author was rumored to have been debriefed by the White House. Its theme, the greatest espionage coup in history. Its story, the chase for a top-secret Russian missile sub. Its title, The Hunt for Red October.
That's a lot.
Can I tell you something that I learned about this book?
Yeah.
That I found fascinating.
Was it the original publisher?
Yes, it
Yeah?
was.
Mhm.
This was the first work of fiction published by the Naval Institute Press. They had been looking around for a work of fiction to dip their toe into those waters, rather than publish, I guess, like submarine manuals. I'm not totally familiar with what they published before that.
I'm assuming like the kind of books that Ryan talked about writing.
Yeah. So they published this book. This was their first work of fiction. I just find that enormously fascinating.
Yep. In all the years that I've known about this, I never knew that until I was reading it this time. So I want to talk about how we're going to do this episode, because as we do many times, we're going to do this a little differently than we've done before. And the way we're structuring this episode is kind of born out of the fact that I want to make sure we spend as much time talking about the movie as possible.
Yeah.
Because it's very good and we like it a lot. And the book is not. So what we're
Just drive that in there.
Yep.
Spoiler.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about the movie. We're just going to talk about the story of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go through the whole thing point by point. And as we're going, we will bring up the book when it is needed.
Yeah. Just to be clear, this book is almost 500 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
And we both, I don't think it's spoiling anything to say we both found it a little rough going.
Yep.
It was as choppy
A lot of chop.
as the frigid seas of the North Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you.
So do you want to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so we know a little bit about it. So I want to just get started with the plot right now.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, I'm going to read what appears on screen at the beginning of the movie.
Okay, go ahead.
In November of 1984, shortly before Gorbachev came to power, a Typhoon-class Soviet sub surfaced just south of the Grand Banks. It then sank in deep water, apparently suffering a radiation problem. Unconfirmed reports indicated some of the crew were rescued. But according to repeated statements by both Soviet and American governments, nothing of what you are about to see ever happened.
Dun dun dun.
Which I think is a great way to start it.
Yeah, it's great.
There's like this famous story where they sent the script to Sean Connery and it was missing the first page. So he's reading it and this is like late 80s
Yeah.
and it's talking about, you know, the height of the Cold War.
Yeah.
And he's going, and he called them back and he says, so I don't understand, like this wouldn't happen. And he didn't know it was a period piece.
Oh, I see.
So they resent that page and he called them back an hour later and said, oh, no, this is great. Yes, I'm in.
Great.
I like this as a start to the movie.
Yeah.
And if we're going to talk about the start of the movie, we've got to talk about how it begins.
Yes, go ahead.
How does the movie begin? What do we see?
You see the eyes of a fucking movie star.
That is, you're goddamn right. That is what you see. So the very beginning of the movie, we meet Marco Ramius,
Mm-hmm.
Captain Marco Ramius of the Red October.
Who has seen some shit.
Yep. And he's also really good at saying when it's cold out.
Yeah.
And then we also meet his second in command, Vasily Borden,
Mm-hmm.
who is played by Sam Neill.
We love Sam Neill.
And they're at the top of the big tower on the top of
And they're putting to sea.
of the submarine of the Red October, and they're putting out. And that's how the movie begins.
Yes.
So I think we should talk for a second. What'd you think about Sean Connery in this movie?
So what I wrote down was that this is like simultaneously the best and worst casting decision that you could possibly make.
How is it bad?
He's not Russian.
Oh, yeah, not even a little.
Not even a tiny bit. Because it's just so funny. Anytime there's like a couple times that Jack Ryan, who we'll talk about in a second, like imitates him to make fun of him. And when he does, he's doing a Sean Connery as James Bond impression. He's not doing a Marco Ramius impression.
No.
But at the same time, it's amazing casting because you just look in the depths and crevices of this man's eyes. He's got a great salt and pepper beard. He has seen some shit. He has authority. He is in command. He knows what he's doing. He's confident. He's a fucking submarine captain.
And I kind of thought, so let's kind of get started on these comparisons. How did you feel that Ramius of the movie compared to Ramius of the book?
Ramius of the book, I mean, was much more unsure of himself, I felt, and like weaker in a way, more emotional.
The word that came to mind when I was reading it is he's kind of goofy.
Yeah.
Like he's just kind of this jolly, friendly guy.
Yeah.
And everyone loves him. Like all the sailors under him love him. But it's because he's really nice and real supportive.
Yeah, he didn't have that like real stern authority and confidence in his actions. I mean, just as an example, like the scene that I think we're about to talk about, because it's coming up shortly, the way that he's portrayed is completely different, like 180 degrees different. But let's wait till we get there to talk about it.
Yeah, the thing about Ramius in this is Okay, so we're going to spoil the entire movie. So for those of you that haven't seen it, the big thing is his big secret is he's defecting to the United States.
Yes, which in the book we learn very soon after the book begins, like page 20.
Yep.
It's like Ramius hated the Soviet Union and everything it stood for, and he was ready to defect. He had made his plans. There's no tension or suspense in terms of like whether or not that's what he's doing or how he came to that decision. It is laid out there. This book, for being a suspense thriller, it does not have a lot of thrills or suspense.
Nope. But the movie
does.
They kind of keep that from you for a little bit. And we're going to come to a scene later where I think we'll talk about it more. But if I'm supposed to believe that this captain is convincing his officer corps to defect from their home country and steal a multi-billion-dollar submarine, I expect him to have some authority.
Yes.
And Sean Connery does.
He does. What happens next?
The next thing is that we cut to London and we meet Jack Ryan.
Yes.
And Jack Ryan has just received word that he needs to fly to the United States. He needs to go to Langley to CIA headquarters.
Yep. He's
leaving his house and he's saying goodbye to his little daughter, who's real cute.
Very cute.
And also saying goodbye to his wife,
Dr. Beverly Crusher.
Yep. I think she's doing the accent that she always wants to do.
It's funny because the thing that drives me crazy about Gates McFadden in Star Trek, which is my favorite television show of all time, in case that was not abundantly clear by now, the way that she speaks is she's not putting on like a British accent, but her phrasing and emphasis is British. Like the way that she asks questions is like a British emphasis. And I think it's just like a pretentious thing. And I note that sometimes she doesn't do it, and I think Jonathan Frakes is the only director that can direct her out of doing it. That is an observation I have made. Prove me wrong. But here she is with her one line doing a terrible British accent.
Is it terrible?
It's not great.
It's fine.
It's not great.
This is the first I'm hearing about this.
It's not good though, is the thing.
All right.
And my question in this scene, now having read the book, is why did they make his wife British? Because in the book, she's American. And I thought, oh, maybe it's just like to kind of set the scene to show that they're in London. And I was thinking this as we were watching. And then the next shot is of them pulling up to the airport. And here are the things you see in quick succession. A giant sign that says London Heathrow, a map of the London Underground, and a Bobby directing traffic. 2 Bobbies. And I think you see a red London bus. Clearly, they didn't need the accent for scene setting, so I'm very confused about what's happening here.
Right.
But sidebar, let's go back.
Okay. What do we have to go back to? What could be so important that we're going back?
Well, I just mentioned, right, that his wife Kathy is coming down the stairs yelling at their nanny about how she is to take care of the child while they're away. And that is the only line spoken by a woman in this movie.
Well, but that's a whole scene where we've got Jack Ryan. There's Jack Ryan and 3 women. Like there's the nanny and his wife and his daughter.
They don't have. It's the only line spoken by a woman in this movie. I'm sorry. No, excuse me. The flight attendant has a line.
Yep. Yeah, she sure does.
Yes.
And she is condescended too, but we'll get to that in a second.
We'll get to that in a second.
Honey, I got a question for you.
Yeah, dear.
How do you feel about the female characters in this movie?
Absent.
Do you think is this a case of them being underwritten?
Yeah.
Or is this just a case of them not being
They're
written?
non-existent. Well, sir, I did a little research.
Okay.
As we were reading this book, and I crunched some numbers, and I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you read this book and I read this book, and we had both had a conversation with each other about the number of characters that were in the book.
Yeah.
How many characters do you think are in this book?
Oh.
And I'm talking about human beings with names in the book who are not historical figures that are referenced, because that does happen sometimes.
I think there are 100 characters.
You are right. There are 105 named characters in this book.
Okay.
How many of them do you think are female?
Less than 5.
You're actually less close.
Really?
There are 9.
Oh.
9 women and 96 men in this book.
Yep.
And of those 9 female characters, I won't say women because not all of them are adults.
Mm-hmm.
Of those 9 female characters, how many of them do you think speak lines?
I'm going to go ahead and say 5.
You are not correct.
No.
3.
Okay.
1 is a secretary.
Of course.
1 is a child.
Okay.
and one is a spy.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Special Agent Hazel Loomis.
Oh, yeah, I remember her because what's her whole spy MO?
Oh, she's like a sexy undergrad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
To try to lure in the men.
Yep.
She's the honeypot.
Mm-hmm.
And they send her in to try to catch the double agent.
Mm-hmm. For those of you that have seen the movie and not read the book, there's a lot of stuff that's not in the movie.
It's actually not important at all.
Yeah, that's kind of it. And I want to hold off because there are things we're going to talk about that weren't in the movie that are important. This just isn't.
Yeah. So every other female character that has a name is referenced but doesn't actually appear and doesn't speak. And most of them are wives. So we have the wife of Admiral White. We have the wife of Skip Tyler. We have the grandmother and wife of Marco Ramius.
Mm-hmm.
We have the wife of a Russian man called Filatov. And there's one other character who I just want to mention for a second because she is the wife of Jack Ryan. She's portrayed by Gates McFadden. She was the one of these, two of these characters, the child and the wife, made it to the screen. She's introduced early in the book as his wife because the scene where he's leaving for the airport is just as early as in the movie. She's not given a name until page 143.
I remember that.
Yep. She never speaks.
Uh-huh.
And we learned on page 265 that she has a job other than being his wife. She's an eye surgeon.
Yep.
She has a prestigious job. Her job is more important than his, and she saves lives and people's sight and vision. And she's a fucking eye surgeon. And apparently also once bandaged him up after a gunshot wound, we hear. I found this upsetting.
Yep. So needless to say, we kind of went into this whole thing. I didn't come out surprised.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, we're talking about two submarines in the 1980s. They would not have had women on them. Like, that is historically accurate.
Yes.
On the other hand, it's just a fact that this is a story about men. Manly men doing manly things.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what it is.
Yep.
There's certainly nothing that is actively offensive towards women in the movie. Like, it's not like they're talking about, well, there's one small scene, but it's not like they're talking about women in derogatory ways or portraying women. They're just not there.
Yeah.
There's a couple of odd things in the book about women. Like, apparently, if you're high up in the Navy, you don't think people should have more than one child. And so there's derogatory speech about women who are your wife having lots of babies. That was something I did not understand.
I remember something about, because we meet Skip Tyler, a character later.
And he's got like 6 kids.
But at first he had no kids.
Right.
And he found after he lost his leg, he found a new love of life.
Yeah.
And now he has 6 kids. And so clearly the decision about whether they should have no children or 6 children is just on him.
Right.
His wife is just there saying okay, do you want to put babies in me? No? Okay, that's fine. Oh, do you want to put all the babies in me? Oh, that's fine too. I'm good.
But his former commander is oh, why you got to be such a breeder, which really confused me because I mean, this might just be my ignorance or bias speaking because I don't come from a military family. I don't know a lot of people, if anyone, who are in the service. But I would have always thought that sort of the traditional family with a husband and wife and lots of kids, the sort of conservative idea of a family, it would be something that the military would be in favor of. But apparently, if you're in the Navy, you're not supposed to have a lot of kids.
Okay, well, I think the thing we have to remember now is we're seeing all of this through the lens of Tom Clancy's brain. So I don't want to take any of this stuff and assume this is how it actually is.
That's fair, yeah.
Even though this is quote unquote the most realistic depiction of the Navy in literary history.
That's fair.
But I'm willing to accept that that's just Tom Clancy's spin on it. And that can't possibly be true for everybody in the Navy.
That's very fair. Okay, I think we're getting a little bit off track. Suffice to say, the female character is underwritten. There can be no argument about this.
All right, so at this rate, it's going to take us 5 hours to get through
Let's
this
keep going.
2-hour movie. So then Ryan goes to... He gets on the airplane, and this wonderful little scene happens where he's talking to the stewardess, and she says, "You should get to sleep." And he says, "I can't sleep on planes." She says, "Well, you should try." And he says, "No, turbulence." And she goes, "Pardon?" Because I think just because she can't hear him. And then he proceeds to say, And he explains to her what turbulence is.
Yeah, she's a flight attendant. It's literally her job to know what turbulence is.
And we've gone back and forth about this line so many times trying to figure out, like, is he just nervous? Is it condescending? Is he mansplaining?
He's mansplaining.
I think I figured it out.
Yeah, what's that?
I think I know.
What?
I think this is just bad writing.
Okay.
I literally think the writer was trying to do something and it didn't work. I think he was trying to show him as being nervous and it comes out very bad. So for a movie that I really enjoy, right off the bat, there's a problem.
The definition of mansplaining is explaining someone else's business to them where they are the expert.
Yep.
And he's explaining turbulence to a flight attendant.
Which is, and the thing is, that is what happens.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think that was the intention. I don't think making him a mansplainer was the intention.
Wow.
All right, so then he gets to Langley and he meets with Admiral Greer at the Central Intelligence Ag. One quick thing about this, we know he's at the CIA headquarters because we see half a sign that says Central Intelligence Ag. I love this because Tom Clancy has to give you background on everything.
Everything.
And
like if someone walks into a building, he tells you the year it was built and where the bathrooms are and where the staircases are and where the emergency exits are and how everybody in the building feels about all of those things.
And in this movie, they're fine with you kind of thinking, oh, we know that CIA's a thing and he's there. And then he meets Greer, who's played by James Earl Jones.
Indeed.
What'd you think?
He's great.
Yeah, he's amazing, right?
He's great. In the book, he's not very interesting.
Not at all.
No, he's just like an old white guy in the book. He's not like... I don't think Tom Clancy had James Earl Jones in mind for this role when he was writing the book.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in this movie get amazing lines and they get amazing moments.
Yeah.
I think James Earl Jones has some of the most delightful moments in the movie. There's a big scene coming up a little bit later where he gets a lot of stuff to do. We just meet him. It's great.
Yeah.
And when they meet, basically he says, Jack, why'd you come here? And Jack says, well, I got all this information about this big Russian submarine that just left. It's got this thing. It's got these doors on it that we don't know what these are. And that's kind of the crux of the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Is the Americans now know that the Red October put to sea, but they know something is special about the boat, but they don't know what it is.
Yes.
And that is why he's there. He says, I know this guy, Skip Tyler. I want to go talk to him, and we'll see if we can figure this out. And Greer says, cool. Then we meet the crew of the Dallas.
Oh, yes.
So the movie kind of takes place in a number of different locations. We've got, the Red October, and we have the Dallas.
Yeah.
And we meet all kinds of cool people. Who do we meet?
We meet Jonesy, who is the sonarman, the chief sonarman.
Uh-huh.
And we meet Lieutenant Beaumont, who is the young trainee sonarman.
Seaman Beaumont.
Yeah. And we meet Cobb, who for 3/4 of the movie we thought that was his name. It turns out Cobb stands for Chief of the Boat.
Yep.
And his name is...
Ferguson, because the actor's name is Ferguson. And he's the writer of the movie.
Great.
Yep. He is the screenwriter, and he's in it, and he's one of my favorite parts.
Fantastic.
And we also meet the captain.
Yep. Bart Mancuso. He's great. He's my favorite character in this movie.
Mine as well.
He's just... God, we got to describe him other than great. We've just been saying people are great.
So I remember the story that Scott Glenn was telling about playing this character.
Okay.
And he actually went on a U.S. submarine and met with a captain and hung out with him for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And unbeknownst to him, before he got there, the captain told the whole crew, when you see this guy on the boat, you're going to treat him exactly the same way you treat me.
Okay.
And to give him that idea of what that was like to be a captain of a sub. And he said he went and he had this idea in his head that the captain would be a lot like a much bigger character.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he met the real captain, he said he was just really confident and really soft-spoken and really supportive of his crew. And that's how he played the character.
Yeah.
And Bart Mancuso is my favorite captain in anything.
Okay.
If I was going to be on any boat or ship or anything, I want to be on Mancuso's boat.
I want to talk about Bart Mancuso from the book for a second.
Okay.
And this is just a really good example of the unnecessary backstory that Tom Clancy puts into this novel.
Tom Clancy's backstory has backstory.
Yeah.
Like when he introduces backstory, within that backstory, he gives you more backstory of the backstory.
Yeah.
It is unnecessary. Please continue.
We know so much information about Bart Mancuso. We know he's from Illinois, and his dad was a barber, and they used to go hunting, and he's an outdoorsman, and he has a wife and several children, and that he's Italian-American. We know so many things about him. Does not matter. Does not figure into the plot one bit.
Nope.
Do we know any of those things about him in the film The Hunt for Red October?
No, we do not.
Does it matter?
No.
Is the important thing how he behaves on the ship to his crew?
Yes.
And is that what we see?
Yes.
Carry on.
All right. So on the Dallas, suddenly they see the Red October. They find the Red October, brand new, huge submarine that just put out, and they hear it, and they are monitoring it, and then we move on to the next scene.
I just want to be clear, because you said they see it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see it. They hear it on the sonar. They hear something on the sonar.
They see it on their instruments.
The important thing about the fact that this is a submarine movie is that submarines are completely blind. They can't see anything.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just these like big, lumbering, monstrous things blindly like sailing around each other, hoping they don't run into each other, which in the movie they never do. In the book, they do run into each other sometimes.
All right, so then we go back to the Red October.
Yes.
And there's a big scene that happens because Ramius goes to his quarters to get his orders.
Yes.
He's got to open up the safe to get his orders.
With a key?
Mm-hmm. And who has the other key?
The political officer.
Putin.
Which
is a fun name now.
Yeah, great.
And then two things happen in this scene that are very important.
Yes.
One is more of a structural thing for the movie, and the other is an important thing for the plot.
Okay.
So the structural thing for the movie is up until this point, every Russian character has been speaking Russian.
Yes.
How do they suddenly? What do they do?
This is like one of the most famous shots in this movie. So Ramius goes back to his cabin. He's been told the political officer's in your cabin. He goes back to his cabin, he opens the door, and Putin, who's a shit, is sitting there reading a book of Ramius's. And he speaks to him in Russian, and he says, "This is not a good book for a good communist to have."
Well, it's the Bible.
Is it the Bible?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's reading a copy of the Bible that he found.
All right, fine, whatever. He's reading the Bible or whatever.
Okay.
And he's reading out the quote in Russian. He starts to read it in Russian. And the camera just zooms in right on his lips. And as the camera zooms in, he begins speaking English. Like he switches from Russian to English in the middle of a sentence. And then the camera zooms back out. And for the rest of the movie, everyone's speaking English. So it's very clear. It's just a really interesting way of indicating these characters are Russians speaking Russian, but because they're English-speaking actors, we didn't want them to speak Russian with subtitles the whole movie. But you should understand that when they speak to each other, they are speaking Russian.
Right. And this was something that I feel like I always gave this movie credit for kind of coming up with this. I found out it didn't. I found out from the director, from John McTiernan.
Oh, yeah?
He stole it from Judgment at Nuremberg.
Oh, okay.
And so that was something that they thought was really, really good. And they said, let's use that.
Cool.
So that's a really cool kind of structural thing for the movie.
Yeah.
But then a big plot thing happens.
Very big plot thing. And this is in the book as well.
Yep. Ramius reads his orders, and Putin says, I'm going to go tell everyone about our orders. And Ramius suddenly kills Putin.
Just kills him.
Just
super kills him.
Breaks his neck, and then burns the orders and takes out of his jacket a new set of orders.
Yes.
And we, as an audience, are going, what the fuck is happening? What is happening?
Yes.
It's just questions.
Yes.
No answers are given.
And this is the thing that I wanted to talk about that was very different in Ramius's, like, affect between the book and the movie, because in the movie he's extremely stoic. This is a plan. He has a step-by-step thing that he's going to do. He kills the guy. He spills the tea to make it look like an accident. He burns the orders. He calls for the doctor. Everything is very calm, very cool and collected, very step-by-step. In the book, it kind of cuts to Ramius like sobbing and weeping over the body and going, "Oh God, it's my fault." And the doctor saying, "Oh no, you did everything you could do. No, there's no reason to take on so." And he's just like acting up a storm. And that is so out of character. Like, if you know this movie, it's so out of character for this character. Such a strange thing for him to do.
Totally.
It really shook me. It was very odd.
So then we go back to Ryan, and Ryan meets Skip Tyler. And that is who is played by Jeffrey Jones.
His one-legged friend.
And they have this really cool conversation about kind of like what these doors are on the boat. And this is the first time that anyone in the movie says, I think I know what this is. And Skip tells him, I think this is a caterpillar drive. I think this is a silent drive.
Yeah.
And they have this really great conversation about what the implications are of a Russian submarine having a silent drive.
Yeah.
And how it could just park right off the coast and shower us with missiles.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you think about this scene. I just want to say this about this scene in contrast to the book.
Yeah.
Because they have this conversation in the book, but there's nothing personal about any of it.
Right.
It's just a bunch of people who know a lot of stuff talking about the stuff they know.
Right.
But in the movie, what's the story that Skip tells him?
Skip tells this, it's a nice little story. He says, he's talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, when I was 12 years old, I built a bomb shelter with my dad because there was one Russian sub off the coast of Cuba. And he's saying, or one, 5 warheads or something. Yeah. And he's like, so that, remember the panic from that. This has the potential to be 100 times as serious, and nobody would know about it until it was all over.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack Ryan's like, shit, that's terrible.
So like the stakes are so much higher.
Well, the stakes are, I guess the one thing I would quibble with is that I do think the stakes are just as high in the book. It's just that they are enshrouded with so much extraneous detail and information. And Tom Clancy saying, I know everything about submarines. He's saying, I did so much research. I am so smart. I am so detailed. Every single thing that I learned has to go into this book. That there's so much extraneous that you don't know what's important and what's not important. And any scene that has any kind of like stakes or tension is just lost in this mess of insane detail.
Whereas the movie focuses on the tension.
Yes.
And therefore becomes a tense movie.
Yes. The movie literally went in and picked, just like, it's like Michelangelo chipping away. Like, it picked the actual plot out of the book and made it into a movie. I can't even imagine how tedious this would have been had they not done that.
Oh, I could completely agree. So then we go back to the Red October, and a whole bunch of things happen really quickly. So they are zipping up the bag that contains the body of Putin, and we met Petrov for the first time, who was played by Tim Curry. We'll talk about him in a second. And basically, a couple things happen here that are really big. One is Ramius takes Putin's missile key.
Yes.
So now he has both.
Yes.
And there's that great scene.
The doctor objects to this.
Yep. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I feel like this is one of the lines you quote more than anything
I do.
from this movie.
I do.
What do you think of Tim Curry in this movie?
He's so good. He's so funny.
He's
the comic relief. I mean, there's nothing else that's funny in this whole movie.
Nope.
Other than Alec Baldwin doing an impression of Sean Connery as he's crawling through the submarine guts.
Right. Tim Curry's so good in it. He's such an idiot. And then the Red October goes to Silent Drive.
Yeah.
So Ramius gives this really big speech to the crew, and they turn on the Caterpillar drive.
And they all sing.
And then they sing the national anthem of the USSR. Couple things I found out. Couple things I found out and a couple of observations.
I just want to say the Russian national anthem has been stuck in my head for 24 hours at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One, so the writer of this movie is Larry Ferguson.
Okay.
Who we've mentioned because he plays the chief of the boat on the Dallas. Right. He's not the only writer, though. Mm-hmm. There's another writer who has come up before who also did a pass on this.
Okay.
Who's John Milius.
Oh, God.
Do you remember him?
I do. He did the USS Indianapolis speech.
Right. He wrote Ramius' speech to the crew.
Of course he did.
Yep. And it's great.
It's great.
He did a great job. The one thing is, so Ramius is telling the whole crew, here's what our orders are. This is all fake. And he says the rest of the Russian Navy is going to be chasing us as a drill, quote unquote. He knows that they're actually going to be chasing them.
Yep.
And then we're going to go to Havana and you're going to all have sex with a bunch of ladies. And one of the Russians in like the mess hall does this incredibly like cartoonish, I'm gonna wave my hands to make the shape of a lady. And the only thing that went through my head is it's so overt. I bet all of his friends were like, dude, sit down, we know what a woman looks like.
Well, so the thing that I wrote down, I actually took, this is like one of the notes that I made. So in the book, so the line in the movie is actually kind of similar to the book. The line in the movie is, he says, where the water is warm and so is the comradeship. And that's pretty much the stank he puts on it.
Yes.
And in the book, he says something similar. But Tom Clancy, instead of just like leaving that to the reader's intelligence, goes out of his way to say, by this, Ramius meant women. And I think he mentions it like 2 or 3 more times.
Yeah.
And it just struck me as such a funny homage to the over-explanatory nature of this book, to have this shot of like the seamen in the mess hall doing this, like the thing where you sort of put your hands, the motion to simulate boobs, and then you go in for the waist, and then you come out again for the hips. Like, and he's like dancing and smiling, and everyone's yelling and cheering. And that is such an encapsulation of how over-explained things are in the book that I almost wonder if they did it like deliberately as a joke. Maybe not.
I have no idea.
That's how it struck me.
It just was very funny.
All right, what happens next?
All right, then we're back on Dallas for just a moment, and the Red October disappears.
Yeah. And
then Jonesy says, "For a second, sir, I thought I heard singing."
Well, because Borodin says to Ramius, because he knows that there's an American sub out there.
Yes. As soon as they go silent, they hear the Dallas.
And he says, are they following us? And he says, no, he's not. He's not turning to follow us. And that he gets really excited. He's like, they can't hear us. They can't hear us. And they're all singing. And Borodin says, should I have them stop singing? And Ramius is so happy. He's, no, let them sing. It's a great moment.
Well, he has to think about it for a second. He gets worried for a moment.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, they need to, it is more important that they sing. I'm going to take the chance.
Yeah. It's
and
great.
Like Jonesy hears the singing, but they think, no, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then the Red October disappears.
Yes.
Then we get this great little scene where we meet Yuri Podorin, who is, okay, so Podorin is this Russian who's clearly very high up.
Uncle Yuri.
Yep. He is Ramius's dead wife's uncle.
In the movie he is. In the book it's explicit. He's not anyone's actual uncle.
Right.
He just refers to him as Uncle Yuri. They, I guess for the movie, decided that was confusing.
Really quick scene of him basically going to his office, meeting all these Russians.
He's just an old, grumpy Russian.
Do you know who he actually is?
No.
He is an editor. He edited The Deer Hunter.
Oh, good.
He almost edited this movie, and they realized it wasn't the right choice, but McTiernan was like, I want to have him in it anyway.
Go good.
He opens a letter from Ramius, and we don't know what the contents of the letter are, but he freaks out.
He spills his tea.
It's very, we don't know what's going on. All we know is that Ramius killed Putin, and now he sent something to this guy that made him freak out.
Yeah.
Then we get to the big scene. So all these things have happened. Ryan meets Greer, and what's going to happen is he's going to be attending a briefing for the National Security Advisor to the President, a guy named Jeffrey Pelt. And we get maybe... I feel like anytime a scene happens, I'm going to say it's my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah.
But this is one of the best scenes in the movie, and it's the briefing.
Yes. So in the book, of the 96 characters, I would say that 15 of them only appear in this scene.
Yep.
We know all of their first and last names. We know their rank in which branch of the military. When we know so much about them, and they never appear again.
So I feel like this is a good point to bring up who I feel is my nominee for Sir not appearing in this film.
Well, you have a large list to choose from, because I will say one of the things that I did when I was keeping track of these characters was, again, 105 characters, named characters in the book. How many of them do you think appear in the film?
Less than half.
A lot less than half.
Oh, how many?
22.
Holy shit, really?
Yes.
That's like nothing.
Yeah. Now, there are a few... That's not 100% accurate, because there are a few characters in the movie who have different names, but sort of the same general...
They fill the role.
They filled the general role as the character in the book, but I did not count those. I was only counting named characters.
Okay.
So yeah, 22 out of 105.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So here's my nominee for Sir not appearing in this film.
Yes.
Because who in the book is this briefing for the benefit of?
The president.
The President of the United States of America.
Yes, indeed.
President someone?
He's never named.
Okay, so he's in the whole book. He's never named. He's clearly not an existing president.
No, because he was a prosecutor that prosecuted mafia bosses, we learn many times.
Many times. This is how I envision the president the entire time. I envision him as a weird combination of like the nanny or grandma in Muppet Babies, where you never see her face, all of the adults in Peanuts, and Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget.
That's really funny, because it sounds like you're envisioning him as someone who's so large that his face is never seen. I was envisioning him as someone so small that his face couldn't be seen. I was picturing a very small man. I think I was picturing like Duke from Doonesbury, but like with his hat pulled so far over his face that you couldn't see his eyes, and like very short.
Yeah.
That's just funny. We were picturing like the opposite thing.
But like both of us agree you'd never see this guy's face.
No, you never see his face.
At all. Oh my God. The president's obnoxious.
He's
and
the worst.
Doesn't need to be in the movie at all. And he's not.
He's not in the movie.
So Pelt, really, his NSA, he takes the place of him.
I thought Pelt was the president. Oops.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Pelt's amazing.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff in this scene. This, I think, is the biggest part for me.
Okay.
And it has to do with two things. One, it has to do with Ryan's kind of characterization. And two, how everyone else treats Ryan.
Yeah.
Book versus movie.
Sure.
So, we keep talking about Jack Ryan. There's like the brand new Amazon show that just came out with John Krasinski as Jack Ryan. He's like the sixth person to play him.
Okay.
Because it was like Alec Baldwin, then Harrison Ford played him twice, and then Ben Affleck played him, and then Chris Pine, and now we have John Krasinski. Like, Jack Ryan has been played by so many actors.
Yeah.
And this character has been seen so many times. I literally have only ever seen The Hunt for Red October. So in my mind, Jack Ryan is Alec Baldwin.
Sure.
And Jack Ryan is such a big character for Tom Clancy. I think you hinted at it before, but like Jack Ryan in the movie is very different than Jack Ryan in the book.
Yeah, he's super different.
Like in what ways would you say? Give me like one or two. Because here's like one big one that I can think of.
Yeah.
In a lot of the reviews and articles I read about the book, The Hunt for Red October, a lot of people talk about how Ryan is not he's kind of subversive. He's not this typical action hero. Like he's an analyst, he's a writer. But that doesn't actually jibe with the book.
Yeah.
Because in the book, he is a man's man.
Yeah.
He is cool under fire. And even throughout the book, when he has moments of being unsure about what's going on in a situation, he has this unwavering confidence that gets him through everything.
Yeah, and Clancy does go out of his way to explain like how manly he is and, all of this wealth of knowledge that he has. And in the movie, they almost do the opposite. Like there's he had like a bad injury, and that's kind of they almost take part of Skip Tyler's story for him because like Skip Tyler was a submarine captain and he lost his leg, so he couldn't captain submarines anymore. I guess it seems like you could.
I don't know. You got to do a lot of running around on a sub.
It's not really like kind of in all.
Well, they
in one
talk
place.
about it. They say in the book like he could captain again.
He could.
He just doesn't want to because of his 6 children.
Right. But in the movie, Jack is constantly like, oh my God, I didn't sign up for this. Oh my God, I didn't sign up for this. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? This is not me.
And like the reason he's doing everything is because all these other characters are saying, you're doing it. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll do it. Whereas in the book, he's like totally willing to do this stuff. Yeah. And so that's like, I think the big difference in the characterization. I like this version of Jack Ryan way more than the book version.
Yeah.
Here's the other part for me that's so big. It's how everyone in the book treats Jack Ryan versus how everyone in the movie treats him. Because up until this point, because basically in this scene with the briefing, they find out that this letter was sent to Bedoran, and he immediately scrambled the entire Russian fleet to go after him.
Right.
And they know he's on a nuclear submarine with warheads, and their immediate thought is, oh my God, they've got a madman on their hands. He is going to attack the United States.
Yes.
He's a rogue agent.
Yeah.
And Ryan is the only person to say, wait a second, I think he's defecting.
And I just think he is because of my knowledge.
Right. Like, I think this is true. And there's that beautiful moment when James Earl Jones, before they go in, he also didn't know he was leading the briefing. Right. And James Greer tells him, you're leading the briefing. And it's beautiful. And so he leads it and he does a very good job. And Greer tells him beforehand, speak your mind, tell him what you think. And
he's going to ask you direct questions, be direct right back. Like, that's the way to get on his good side.
So he tells them all that he thinks he's defecting, and there's a whole fight, and afterwards Greer just whispers to him, I said, speak your mind, Jack, but Jesus. It's maybe James Earl Jones' best line in the movie.
Oh, I thought that is a reference to the fact that he stops the conversation by slamming on the table and screaming, God damn it, or something like that.
Well, no, he slams on the table and goes, son of a bitch, because he realizes, oh, he's defecting.
Yeah. So I always thought the reference was not to what he said, but how he said it.
I think it's both.
Okay, fair enough.
I really think it's both.
No, but in the book, he never ever has to prove himself. He speaks and his word is believed every single time. And I guess it's good for what Tom Clancy is clearly trying to do, which is make him this incredible hero, but it's not great for like tension and conflict.
Yeah. Like, how long does it take before everyone in the movie is sold on the fact that Ramius is defecting?
Like a page, and it's a 500-page book.
Sorry, let me rephrase that. At what point in the book does it take?
Oh, God, like page 30, like very early in the book.
And in the movie, how long does it take?
It's about halfway.
Like more than that?
Yeah.
Because it's like, they're not even all convinced. The last person he has to convince is Mancuso.
Yeah.
And he's not on the Dallas for it's like 2/3.
Oh, right. Well, because they bring him out there, and then in the time that it took him to get onto the Dallas, the U.S. has changed their mind and sent different orders. So he has to basically he's not doing the same thing. At this point he has to convince Mancuso to disobey orders and listen to him, Jack Ryan.
Right.
And so that's like a different job that he has to do.
Yeah, it's this great kind of dynamic setup between Ryan and Ramius, where Ramius wants to meet the right American that isn't going to just kill him. And Ryan says, I think I know what this guy is doing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the two of them versus everyone else.
Yeah.
But they don't know that they're on the same side.
Yeah.
But in the book, everyone knows.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's no tension around that whatsoever.
So we're sort of at the peak, about halfway through. What happens next?
Oh, we're not even halfway through.
Oh, God.
Really quick scene happens. We go to the Kanavalov, which is a Russian sub, captained by Tupolev. Stellar Skateboard shows up in this movie. So Stellan Skarsgård is Tupolev, and he gets the message from the Russian government that says you got to go sink the Red October.
And he's like, shit.
And he's like, we got to go. We're gonna go kill a friend.
Yeah.
Let's do this. There's actually a super quick moment where he says, can we go to 105 on the reactor so we can get there faster? And they said we can do it, but it's not recommended. And he says, do it and push it. I think this is kind of a reference to the Politovsky.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So,
which is Sir Sub not appearing in this film.
So in the book, there is a gigantic subplot that
I see what you did there.
There's a gigantic plot in the book that I'm going to attempt to cover very quickly because it is dumb. There's a sub that explodes because they did bad.
That's it. Like, it has a bad day. It has a really bad day. It's going too fast and it's old and it dies.
They did not use their sub right, and the engineer knew that it was going to explode, and the captain wouldn't listen to him, and indeed it does explode.
Yep.
And one guy gets off. He's in, I think, Walter Reed.
Do you mind if we hold off on him for a moment?
No, that's fine.
Okay, because we're going to get to him.
Oh, boy.
We're going to get to him. So that one explodes. Then we get a really nice scene where Ramius tells all of his officers, they have the dinner scene.
Yes.
And this is that they kick out Tim Curry.
Who's being so annoying. He's, by the way, I just want to be clear. Tim Curry, the doctor, in both book and movie, is the only officer who is not part of the plot.
Right.
Yes.
Not part of the
defection plot.
Exactly.
Yes.
So in this dinner, this is where Ramius tells all of his men, hey, I sent a letter to Padoran telling him that we're defecting.
And just so you know.
And they're all like, what the fuck did you do? They're gonna try to kill us. And what's his response to them? Why did he do it? Well, when Cortez reached the New World,
he burned his ships
so that his men couldn't go back. That was John Milius as well. The Cortez line.
Oh, good.
So he has this great scene with them, and he has a really nice scene with him and Borden. Borden, I think we should talk about Borden for a second.
R.I.P.
Yeah. What do you think of Sam Neill in this movie?
He's so cute.
He's so sweet.
He just wants to go to Montana.
Oh, man. Maybe we actually should wait. He gets his big
Jurassic
scene
Park,
later.
he got to see Montana.
That's true. That is true. It's very nice. We'll talk about Montana here in a minute.
Okay.
All right, then we got to go. So Ryan has now left. He has been sent to try to figure this out. He has been sent to try to make contact with Ramius.
Yes.
Because Pelt says, here's the deal. I'm going to keep my options open. I don't 100% believe that he's defecting, but like, you're expendable, so I'll send you.
Yeah, go.
So he reaches the USS Enterprise.
On a crazy helicopter.
Right. And he meets with Admiral Painter, who does appear in the book.
Yeah.
But in the movie, he's played by Fred Dalton Thompson.
Indeed he is.
Senator Fred Thompson, a co-star of Law and Order.
Yes.
And almost the president in 2008.
Great. And he also meets with Davenport, a.k.a. Daniel Davis, a.k.a. Data's Moriarty.
He's also the butler on The Nanny.
Oh, excuse me.
This is... There's this one thing that I just remember from the book that happens in this scene, and it happens throughout the entire book. And I don't know if you remember all of these times. Tom Clancy loves to fill the book with so much information, but he also likes to withhold information. So he constantly will say, Ryan explained to this character for a few minutes. Mm-hmm. And then they go to actual dialogue. But you as a reader never know what he said. Mm-hmm. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't notice that. I'm sorry.
It's throughout the entire book.
I guess
super
I just
frustrating.
assumed that he's explaining everything that's happened in the plot up to this point, and that now there's new information.
He literally withholds information sometimes because of it.
Okay.
So they have this moment. There's a lot of great little moments in here. And then we find out a really big piece of information back on the Dallas. Mm. We find out that we can actually track the Red October?
Dun, dun, dun. So Jonesy,
Mhm.
who's Courtney B. Vance,
Yep.
heard this sound and was able to sort of clean it up and record it, and it's clearly a man-made sound.
Mhm.
Essentially, the silent drive is not as silent as they think when Jonesy's on the case.
Right.
And he is explaining to Captain Mancuso that he has been able to sort of plot the course of where this sound is heading, and he thinks he knows where they're going. They're going to this very deep area of the North Atlantic where there's like a lot, like near Iceland, I think, where there's all these like very dangerous rock formations. And he says, we know that the Russian captains can get through these formations because they have hyper accurate maps of that whole area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a Russian sub because I can plot it on the map, and that's exactly where they're heading.
Yeah.
And so Mancuso has one of his best lines from the movie.
I want to do a reenactment of this.
Okay.
You get to be Mancuso.
Oh, I get to be Mancuso? Okay,
yes,
go ahead.
and I'll be Jonesy.
Go ahead.
I have just now presented everything, and you are silent.
I'm just looking at you through my giant glasses.
Look, sir, I know this sounds crazy.
Relax, Jonesy. You sold me.
It's such a beautiful moment.
It's great.
It's so good. And that's why Mancuso is my favorite captain of all time.
And in the book, their relationship is really beautiful, too. Like, he the equivalent of that line is instead of saying, like, this is great, I think this is good information, he literally turns to the guy standing next to them, who is Thompson, and says, I want this man promoted for this. Like, just instantly. And also, you can have a shower.
Right, because that's the thing you just don't get.
Do.
And rather than explaining all of that, we just get this beautiful moment where the captain's proud of him.
Yeah, it's great.
And you can tell, I feel like when Jonesy walks away, it's clear like he's going to be riding that high for days.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, everything's good.
It's great.
I'm great. The imposter syndrome probably goes away at that point.
What happens next?
All right. Then we go back to Ryan meeting with Admiral Painter, and he tries to convince him about the whole defection. And Painter says, Fred Thompson is amazing as an actor. And he has this great... In fact, I want to take a quick sidebar here for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
So one of the problems that I've had with this movie over the years, because I've loved this movie since I was a little kid. Like, my dad showed me this movie. Like, I don't even think he showed it to me. It's not like my dad sat me down and said, you got to watch this movie with me, son.
On.
He was like watching it, and I wanted to hang out with my dad, so I watched it with him. And one of the things that I've found out over the years is that a lot of the people who are in this movie have engaged in all manner of kind of bad behavior.
Oh, God. Okay.
And so
I can think of one.
I want to talk about 5 people in this movie, kind of
a lot.
in increasing levels of bad behavior.
All
and
right.
I want to start with Fred Thompson. Okay. And for background, he was the senator from Tennessee from 1994 to 2003. And then he ran for president in 2008, and he lost in the primary to John McCain, who famously went on to lose against Barack Obama.
Recently died.
Yes. So Fred Thompson died in 2015 of lymphoma. Now, I start with him because as far as bad behavior goes, this is really more of a case of I think he and I just disagree politically. He's a Republican. I am not a Republican. And
shocker.
I know, right? So a couple things. He stated that Roe versus Wade was, quote, bad law and bad medical science.
Great.
Cool. So that's cool. He didn't support a federal ban on gay marriage.
Okay.
Okay. But he would have supported an amendment that would allow states to ignore gay marriages recognized by states that did allow them.
Okay.
So if you got married in one state, he said other states should not have to recognize that.
That's stupid.
He was also skeptical that humans cause climate change.
Okay.
So just...
He died, so...
Well, that doesn't make it okay. So he and I disagree. I'm starting with him. I think that's some bad behavior, but that's not terrible.
All right.
Then we move on to Alec Baldwin. Okay. So Alec Baldwin was married to Kim Basinger, and they divorced. They have a daughter. And kind of famously, in 2007, as a result of just the divorce proceedings and custody and everything, he left a voicemail for his daughter where he called her a, quote, rude, thoughtless little pig. You remember that, right?
I do.
TMZ released that tape. And there was a whole controversy about it, and it was not good. And then in 2011, he was removed from a plane for being belligerent and refusing to stop playing Words with Friends. So he sounds like he's got a temper, which is not awesome.
But like a passion for Scrabble.
Yeah, totally. That's totally fine. He likes wordplay. That's good. Then we move on to Sean Connery. So he has been, I didn't know this. Did you know how many times he's been accused of tax evasion?
No.
A bunch. He's sold some property And he never got charged, but his wife and 16 other people were charged in tax evasion regarding that property selling.
Fascinating.
Some of whom were the lawyers that facilitated the sale.
Great.
And then the quote from him that I've read for years and just always bothers me is this. I'm not going to do the accent. I don't think there is anything particularly wrong about hitting a woman, although I don't recommend doing it in the same way you'd hit a man. An open-handed slap is justified if all other alternatives fail and there has been plenty of warning.
Great.
Yeah, I remember like Barbara Walters asked him about this in an interview, and I can't remember if this is where he said women should be barefoot and pregnant, like in the kitchen.
Okay.
So that's not awesome.
No, it's it's not good.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Then we move on to director John McTiernan.
Oh no.
Yeah, who is a guy, like, I really like a lot of John McTiernan movies. I like Die Hard a whole bunch.
Yeah.
I really like The 13th Warrior, which we might do on this show at some point. One of the sections on his Wikipedia, can I read you this title?
Yeah, go ahead.
Criminal charges, felony conviction, and incarceration.
Great.
He hired a PI to illegally wiretap one of his producers at one point. He lied to the FBI about it in 2006, and he went to federal prison in 2013.
Oh my God.
He was for this. It took years for them to do this. It went back and forth. He was pleading guilty, then he wanted to go to trial, then plead guilty, then go to a trial. He was incarcerated for 328 days of a 12-month sentence, and he also had a civil suit the whole time that was in progress from his ex-wife that was pending like all at the same time, and he declared bankruptcy in prison.
God.
He has not made anything since 2003 except for one thing.
Uh-huh.
There was a Tom Clancy video game that was coming out, like one of the Splinter Cells or something like that. He directed a commercial for it.
Oh, good.
And it's really badass, but that's the only like work he's had directing in 15 years.
That's a shame. Let's move on. I think I know what's coming here.
Jeffrey Jones.
Oh God.
Oh man, Jeffrey Jones. We all know him from Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Beetlejuice, and
Amadeus.
Oh, he's so great in everything that he does. He also in 2002 and between 2002 and 2003, he pleaded no contest to felony charges of soliciting a 14-year-old boy to pose for nude photographs.
Great.
He has appeared in 2 films since then and 1 television series. He was arrested at that point for possession of child pornography.
Oh my God.
He got sentenced to 5 years probation, counseling, and had to register as a sex offender. He has since been arrested twice for failing to update his sex offender status.
Ugh.
And I really like this movie, but my God.
I mean, here's the deal.
My God.
Here's the deal. I think this might be selection bias because I really strongly feel that if you have 25 or 30 or 40 men at random selection, if only 5 of them have done something terrible, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah. I agree with that.
He's looking at me like, I'm not going to argue with you on that.
The thing about it is just, this is one of my favorite movies. It's not that I think this is special. It's just that it's special for me.
I understand.
Because I love this movie, and this behavior is inexcusable.
It's not good.
It's very, very
None of
bad.
what you say is good.
All right, so you want to go back to Red Route 1?
Yeah.
So the Red October begins the run. Now, the whole Red Route 1 sequence does not happen in the book.
No.
There's like, other than the Politovsky like having a very bad day,
Yeah.
there's no action
No.
throughout the book.
Not really. Not till the end.
Yeah.
The very end.
And this is like, it understands it needs to be a movie. And when I say action, I don't mean giant action scenes. I just mean stuff should happen.
Suspense. You're saying suspense.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're running Red Route 1 and suddenly sabotage.
Explode.
Yep. They can't run the Silent Drive anymore because there has been sabotage.
Sabotage.
And they have to go to the propellers, and now everyone can hear them.
Yes.
And that's kind of where we leave them for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut back to Pelt.
Yeah.
He meets with the Russian ambassador, who we are meeting for the first time. Now, he had a different name. What was his name in the book?
His name in the book is Alexei Arbatov.
Mm-hmm.
They call him Alex, and they change it in the movie for some reason.
Now he's Andrei.
He's Andrei Lysenko.
And I wonder if they just wanted a more Russian-sounding name.
Yeah, I don't know. Alexei is really Russian-sounding to my ears.
But they keep calling him Alex.
Yeah, I guess.
So maybe that has something to do with it. You really get the sense with his character that he doesn't want to be there.
Yeah. Well, basically the way that this movie is cast, all of the Americans are American and all of the Russians are British or Australian or New Zealand.
There's a number of actual Russians who are on the boat, but you're right.
They don't speak usually.
Yeah, a lot of them are not Russian.
Yeah.
What'd you think of Joss Ackland in this?
He's great. He's so slimy. He's just like, I am lying to you, and I know you're lying to me, and we're just going to keep up that polite facade until I can leave this room.
How long, and this is a difference in the book, how long do these scenes last with the ambassador and Pelt and the president in the book?
Not long. Oh, in the book, they last forever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the book, it's very drawn out. It's like, come in, have a drink. We're going to have a drink. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. In the movie, it's like, it's very down to business,
right.
Which it has to be, because if you had even one scene from the book the same length as that scene is in the movie, the movie would be 10 hours long.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even imagine.
And super boring. Like,
it's really boring.
Don't turn this into a miniseries.
No, God, no.
Don't do it.
No, even the movie is quite long.
Yep. In that meeting, he tells him, it's a rescue mission.
We lost a sub.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing, but
right.
some of the boys on that sub, they're sons of our high party members. So, like, we really want to just get it back.
Yeah. And Pelt says, how can we help? And he says, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
It's fine.
We've got this. And then we see how much they've got it, because then a plane finds the Red October and fires a torpedo at them.
It does.
And we get like one of the big action scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
Because now they can see the Red October and the torpedo goes after them and Ramius is able to dodge it. But then it's this great moment. Like,
none of this is in the book.
None of it. But I love this moment because they do dodge the torpedo, but it like impacts on the wall. It's a giant explosion. And one of the crew members on the Red October goes like, Captain, they're really shooting at us.
Yeah.
What's happening? And Borden has that great line where he says, come on, if they were really shooting at us, we'd be dead. And even he is terrified.
Yeah.
And it's this great moment where Ramius is looking around the boat at all of the young sailors looking at him, and they do not trust what's going on.
Yeah.
Then they find out where the sabotage came from.
Yeah.
And they find out that it was sabotage.
And this is, I think, where we meet Melican, not for the first time, but like he starts to play a central role because he's really mad. You see him like holding this like smoking object, and he is pissed off that someone sabotaged his engines.
Tell me about Melican in the book.
Well, the thing that's important to know about Melican in the book, he's the chief engineer. But like what he struck me as in the book is more like Scotty to Captain Kirk. Like they are equals. They are of equal rank and tenure, but one just happens to be in the command line and one happens to be in the engineering line. Like he could captain a boat if he wanted to. He doesn't want to. He wants to be the chief engineer because he loves the engines. And Rami, the other really important thing that I think we get a little bit, but not as much in the movie, is that Ramius truly respects his talent. Like he says to him several times, like, well, you can fix anything. And we think that is what he believes.
Yeah.
Like he's very good at his job.
Like if I were to ask you, in the book, does Ramius have a bestie?
Yeah.
Who's his bestie?
In the book,
In the
it's
book.
Melican.
And who's his bestie in the movie?
Borden.
Yeah. So like Melican's there, but he's got a greatly reduced role.
Yeah, and he's definitely like portrayed as a much younger character. He's really funny. Like just his sort of body language throughout the whole thing. He's always smoking. He's always talking around his cigarette. Like he holds a cigarette in his mouth with his lips as he speaks. And he's a very funny character, but not quite the same as in the book.
But there's this great scene, it's really, really short, where he discovers the sabotage. He discovers that it was sabotage. He can fix it, but they've got to go without the caterpillar for a while.
Yeah.
Back on the Enterprise, Picard says to Data,
okay.
We get this. We go back to Ryan in the shower.
Yeah.
It's actually a really cool
sort
scene.
Of bending over in a way that nobody showers.
He's very tired.
I guess.
Yeah, and he's enjoying the hot shower.
Up his butt.
It's like a giant shower, and he's just by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where we see Alec Baldwin's first impression of the movie.
Yeah.
Because now he's doing an impression of Fred Thompson. And he keeps asking himself, like, how is he going to get everyone off the sub? Like, how is he get the crew can't possibly be going along with him, so how's he going to get them off? Is he going to kill them all? How's he going to get them off the sub? And he figures out how he's going to get them off a nuclear sub.
Yes.
And he runs up to Painter and says, I figured out how he's going to get them off. And Painter says,
not now.
Not now. We got shit going on. And a plane crashes on the deck of the Enterprise.
Yeah, and that this has happened in the book. It's much more extended. That they're like there's a fighter, a Harrier jet, I think. I say that as if I know what that is. I've heard that before.
Okay.
There's like lots of fighter. There's much more. There's many more fighter planes in the book than in the movie, and we hear a lot about the pilots and all that, and there's a plane that goes down and someone gets shot and they have to bring it down. And I remember, and in this case in the movie, there's a fighter plane that like is having an emergency and they are trying to make an emergency landing and they don't quite succeed and they just like crash right into the aircraft carrier. And I remember saying to you, like, is this important? Like, what is this supposed? And you were like, no, it just kind of represents that like everything's kind of heightened and everything's going wrong.
Yeah.
Because Fred Thompson has this amazing line.
This business will get out of control. It'll get out of control and we'll be lucky to live through it.
Everything's going wrong. Everything's terrible. He feels very much out of control. Yeah.
This is actually, I want to take 1 second to talk about kind of the way masculinity is viewed in this versus in the book. In the book, I never get the sense that any of the characters don't want there to be a war.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like everyone's just kind of ready for it.
Yeah.
Like, Clancy presents the Russians as being the bad guys, and he presents the Americans as being amazing.
Yeah.
And he really sets it up like, well, if there ever was a war, we'd kick their asses because they deserve it because they're communists. They're not great like us.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movie, I get the sense from a lot of characters that war's a bad thing.
Yeah.
And this whole thing is crazy.
Yeah.
And we need to get this under control because people are dying.
Well, you said to me last night, like, I don't know, like, is there really like a particular example of toxic masculinity in this book? Like, I don't know. It's very masculine, but I don't know that any of it is particularly toxic. And I said, well, the entire Cold War was pretty much based on toxic masculinity.
And that's the thing I like about the movie, because the movie absolutely views the Cold War as a bad thing.
Yeah.
It views it as ultimately destructive.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in the book, they kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like, I think Clancy enjoyed the Cold War, which is really fucked up to say.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
But we get this great moment, and then Ryan gets on a helicopter because he's going to fly out to the Dallas.
He talks him into sending him.
Basically, he finds out that the Dallas is tracking like a seismic anomaly.
Yeah.
And he goes, wait a second, I know that the Caterpillar could be mistaken for that. I think he's found the Red October. Get me on that boat.
Yeah, and this is all super, super sketchy because they're like, we can only just kind of barely get you out there. Like, no helicopter really has enough fuel, and we're going to have to like give it extra, and it's literally just going to have to drop you off and turn around, and there's actually no guarantee that we can actually get the message through to the captain to come up to the surface and get you, and we're not really going to know if he got the message until we're out there. So it's all very sketchy.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of, if you would say, tension.
Yes.
Then we get to the Crazy Ivan scene.
Yeah.
So this is the first time the Crazy Ivans have been introduced in the movie.
Okay.
And what is a Crazy Ivan?
Okay. The Russian sub captain, he turns around really quick to see if anyone's behind him because, as we have previously established, they cannot see anything
Behind them. Yep. Okay. So Crazy Ivan happens. And the Dallas is following Red October at this point because they've been able to track them. And we get this amazingly tense... this is my favorite scene in the movie.
Okay.
And a couple of things are happening. We're on the Dallas, seeing them going full silent and worried they're going to run into the back of the Red October because now they know they can be heard, so they turn off their engines.
Yeah.
It's very, very tense on their end. But what's happening on the Red October is Ramius and Borodin are in Ramius's quarters.
Just hanging out
just
while
talking.
This tense thing is happening.
And it's great because... We said we're going to wait to talk about Borodin and why we love him.
Yeah.
I love Borodin because of this scene.
Of course.
Because this is, what does he tell Ramius in this scene?
He wants to go to Montana and marry an American woman and raise rabbits.
Yep.
And I feel like there's a lot in the book about how the Russians are really kind of dumbstruck by American culture.
Yeah.
Because what we're given to understand is like they've been told a lot of things about Americans and their lifestyle that like aren't true by, the high government. And there's a great scene actually, which is okay for me to mention now because it's not in the movie whatsoever, about once they get all of the like enlisted men, all of the soldiers, like they get them off the boat, they're in Washington, D.C. They sort of drive them around like they're on tour, explaining to them like, do you see all this traffic? It's because all Americans own cars, even the poorest of the poor. And they drive them through the nice neighborhoods and they see the big houses and like all of this stuff and the idea of what America is like to people that have been raised in a communist country in this time period is really condensed into this one scene.
Yep.
Because not only are there these things that clearly he's heard about or read about or maybe even seen like movies, but just this sort of wide-eyed wonder about the things that you're allowed to do. You can drive from state to state. Will they let me live wherever I want to? Like all of
No
this,
papers?
all of these like very basic freedoms that he's just almost incredulous that will be offered to him. And it's so sweet. Like it's just so sweet. Well, it's funny because like on this viewing, because the famous line is like, I would like to live in Montana. And I said to you, will they let me live in Montana?
Yeah.
And I said to you, they'd probably be delighted for him to want to live in Montana. Like imagine any better place to like hide someone that's trying to be hidden by the CIA. Like Montana's great. Of course they want you to live in Montana.
But then the other thing happens, which is Ramius talks.
Yeah.
And he says, what do you want to do? And Ramius goes, I have no such appetites.
Yeah.
And he just starts to talk about like kind of why he's doing what he's doing. And he never says specifically why, but he gives you a lot of information that lets you infer why. And one of the big changes that's made regards Ramius's wife. So in the book, she's dead.
Yeah.
But he was with her when she died.
Yeah.
He was with her through her illness. And it's very hard for him.
Yeah.
How is it different in the movie, though?
She died while he was at sea. Like he basically had two wives, the sea and his human wife, and he gave much more time to the sea.
Like he has that great line where he says, I widowed her the day I married her.
Yeah.
Because like everyone dies at sea.
Right.
And it's just, he's got this amazing speech that, and the entire time it's happening, it's so tense because the Red October's circling around the Dallas, not knowing that she's there.
Yeah.
And everyone on the Dallas is freaking out. And Ramius is just talking about why the Cold War is awful.
Yeah.
Like, it's just killing everyone. There's no point to any of this. And I feel like in that scene, you get a sense of why Ramius is doing this more than anything in the book. Because in the book, it's just clear he's doing it. Of course he's doing it. The USSR is terrible.
Yeah.
And America's amazing. And that's Clancy's view.
Yeah.
But in the book, he has a real reason for doing it.
Yeah. Totally.
I really love that.
Yeah.
And then we move on to the next scene.
So Ryan's in the helicopter and the helicopter pilot's like, look, the boat's not here. We're going to have to turn around. And he starts yelling at him like, mister, you're going to use your fuel reserve. And he's like, I am not allowed to use my fuel reserve except in time of war. And Ryan's like, no, this is when he's like, mister, if you don't get me to that sub, war is what you're going to get. It's a great, that line about I'm not allowed to use it except in time of war for some reason really struck me. So then they see the submarine coming up out of the water, the Dallas.
Because the Dallas has found the Red October, and they get this notification like, you've got to go to the surface.
So they've got to break off the chase. So Mancuso is pissed as hell. He is so mad. And his bestie on the Dallas is Thompson, who we haven't really talked about.
Right.
And we love Thompson because he's really dry and funny. And basically, it is now Thompson's job to try to catch Ryan as they dangle him in the middle of the North Atlantic, to be clear, in the crazy wind and crazy rain. And Mancuso says to him as they're like running through the sub to try to get up to the top, have you done this before? And he's like, yeah, once on a clear day near Hawaii. And just the way he says it is one of my favorite lines in the movie.
But you're absolutely right. Mancuso is so pissed at Ryan.
Yeah.
Do you know who else is pissed that Ryan was on the Dallas, probably?
Tom Clancy. Because he was never on the Dallas in the book.
Nope, never.
Never happened.
Never once.
Never happened. This scene is so dramatic, and it is not in the book.
None of it.
So Mancuso's already mad because they had to lay off the chase, and he's also mad that, like, this guy is putting him and his crew in danger, like, just by virtue of this fact that they have to catch him. And the helicopter pilot is, like, dangling Ryan down the rope. He's swinging like crazy. And the guy at the top of the and at one point he swings and Thompson tries to catch him and he almost falls off the tower. Like his whole body goes off the tower. And Mancuso like literally has to catch him and like reel him in. He almost dies. He would have died had Mancuso not caught him. And so the helicopter pilot is like, fuck this. Like, we gotta go. And also they have no fuel. So they start reeling him up and Ryan's going, no, don't. And he's like, yeah, we're gonna bring you back up. And Ryan cuts the rope and falls into so we already learned that there's a diver on standby in case Ryan falls in the water.
Yeah, and he hits the release and releases his harness.
Yeah. We also already know that he has 4 minutes to live if he falls into the North Atlantic. That's been clearly explained. And Mancuso does what any good captain would do, is starts screaming, and he's standing there with his injured first mate who's hit his head and is bleeding everywhere, starts screaming like man overboard, get the diver out. And the thing that I love about this is like, I can't imagine a submarine captain has to scream man overboard very often.
But he's ready for it.
He's ready. He is on the ball. And then he starts running down. And this is another thing that I loved, showing like his command and his authority over the guys on the boat, because he like goes down, he screams like, get the doctor. And for a minute,
this is the only time he screams in the entire movie.
He's like yelling orders.
Yeah.
And he yells, get the doctor. And for a minute I thought he meant get the doctor for Ryan, who just fell in the Atlantic. But no, he's screaming, get the doctor for Thompson, who is bleeding profusely from a cut on his head and probably has a concussion.
Yeah, fuck Ryan.
Yeah. And he's trying to get down the ladder, which is completely full of guys, like trying to see what's going on. And he starts yelling like, make a hole, coming through. And I love the idea of making a hole.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's clearly submarine talk. And there's not a lot of it in this movie. So I enjoyed that. And he gets down there and Ryan's like lying on the floor, coughing and vomiting up seawater. And he's just like, why are you on my boat?
Yep.
I hate you. I hate this.
Mm-hmm. And then Ryan tells him, here's the deal. We're tracking the Red October. And he says, yeah, I know we're tracking him. We had him. We had to break off to come get you asshole.
Jerk. Yeah.
Like, and he says, I think he's trying to defect. This is what I think is going on. Literally at that moment, Pelt meets with Andre again.
Yes.
And this time Andre says, we have to level with you. I've been given more information. The boat is called the Red October. It's captained by a guy named Marco Ramius. We received a letter from him. He says he's going to fire all his missiles on the United States.
He's gone mad.
So you're going to have to help us sink him. While this is all happening, that gets back to the Dallas. And after Ryan tells Mancuso all of this, Mancuso goes, well, I just got a thing saying that he's crazy and you're wrong and we got to go kill him. So we're going to go find him again because I know where he is and we're going to fucking kill him.
And so the next big challenge for Ryan is to convince Mancuso literally to go against his orders and to try to catch him instead of shoot him out of the water.
Now, we all remember the Crazy Ivan scene from before.
Yes.
And Ryan tells Mancuso, no, you got to believe me, he's defecting. And this is how he bullshits Mancuso. Suddenly, a Crazy Ivan starts. But before that, Ryan has said to Mancuso, you got to trust me. I know this guy. He's defecting. Has he made any Crazy Ivans? And he says no. He says, well, his next one's going to be to starboard. And he makes up some bullshit about why it's going to be to starboard.
He always goes to starboard in the bottom half of the hour.
Right. And then suddenly Crazy Ivan happens, which is amazing timing.
Yeah, and you hear Jonesy over the speaker screaming, like, Crazy Ivan!
Uh-huh.
And the captain, to his credit, his immediate response is, which way is he turning? And Jonesy's just screaming out,
to the starboard!
So good.
And it's great because Mancuso in that moment goes, maybe this guy's not full of shit.
He is full of shit, though.
He is, completely. But he's not. He's right.
He's just right. Just this particular thing, he is full of shit.
And he tells Mancuso later, and it's great. But he basically makes his presence known to the Red October. Says, we're going to get ready to shoot him, but we're going to let them know we're here. And there's this great kind of tense moment where everyone's like, what the fuck's going to happen? Because this is the first time that Ramius is interacting with Americans.
Right.
They go up to the surface. And they have a conversation.
Up Periscope, they say.
They have a Morse code conversation. It's just the two captains talking.
On Periscope.
And it's just, I don't even want to describe it. It's so good.
Well, Ryan is basically giving Mancuso a piece of paper telling him what to write, telling him what to Morse. And the last thing that he gives him, we don't actually know what it is. But we know he needs a map. He needs to find like some coordinates to tell him to do something. And Ramius's reaction when he gets this message is literally like, it like physically pushes him backwards and he like slams the viewer closed and he's like, shit. But this is the one ping only scene, which is so famous.
It's so good.
Basically he's getting this long message because Ryan's been assured the captain is the only one that would be seeing this message. And he's saying like, if you agree, send one ping. So it's so tense because it's like if he sends one ping, it means that he hears and understands that the Americans understand that he's defecting. If he sends anything less or anything more, they will shoot him and everyone will die. It's so tense. It's so good.
Then we come to the third act. And I've got all these different scenes right here, but I feel like it's important to break this down for a second because this is also a huge difference from the book. So in the book, I want to talk about a fake out. So Clancy fakes the audience out, and we had a discussion about this.
We had some words.
So this is the fake out. All right. So I mentioned the Politovsky.
Yeah.
The ship that had a bad day. That's a piece of information that's given to you.
Mm-hmm.
There's another piece of information given, which is that the GRU has a spy on board the Red October who is posing as a cook.
Right.
We know these pieces of information. And then a third thing happens, which is and also we know he has an extraction plan.
Mm-hmm.
He has a way of getting off the Red October, so he can sabotage it and get off the boat.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, a dude is found floating in the ocean.
Yes.
And he's rescued by the Americans and he's taken back to the States. And we meet all these doctors who don't matter and find out about their whole backstories. But this guy can't talk. And I know what Clancy's trying to do.
Uh-huh.
What he's trying to do is he's trying to fake the audience out. And he's trying to say, like, maybe this is the spy cook. Maybe this guy's from the Red October.
Uh-huh.
Because if it is, then he's not on the Red October anymore and they're fine. But if it's not, if he's someone else, there's still a spy on the Red October.
Right.
And then the big reveal happens later in this whole third act where you find out he's from the Politovsky.
Yeah.
He's like the only survivor of the Politovsky.
Except
Okay, because there's a big except, I think.
when the Politovsky blows up, there's a very specific scene where the cook is the only one to escape. And they talk about how he puts on the escape suit and he goes down the escape hatch and he does his best, but he doesn't close it properly, which means that nobody else can get out. And so immediately following that is the scene where he's rescued from the ocean waters and he goes to the hospital. And it never occurred to me that you were ever supposed to think that he was from another ship, the Red October, because it was so instantly clear that he was from the ship that exploded. And also there was literally no other reason to bring that other ship into it at all if he wasn't from that ship.
Yeah.
And so literally yesterday, after we had both finished the book and watched the movie, you started talking to me about this. And I was like, what in the actual fuck are you talking about? What do you mean you're supposed to think he's on the Red October? Clearly he's not. And you were like, well, this is poor writing.
And that's what it really comes down to.
Yeah.
This is 100% just poor writing. And it would be easy for me to say, oh, well, he didn't mean it as a fake out, except he structures the book in a way where you find out that he's from the Politovsky, and then immediately later you find out that the spy cook is still on the Red October.
Right.
So I legitimately believe in Clancy's head, he thought he was doing something really clever.
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's not.
It just isn't, but it's structured in that way.
Right.
So that's annoying.
Yeah.
But let's talk about this third act.
Great.
So we move into the third act.
Yes.
The Red October suddenly has a bad problem.
Another bad problem.
Yep.
A second bad problem.
And
It's very dramatic.
And what does it lead to?
I mean, there's radiation.
Yeah.
The radiation contamination, the whole ship.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor is very concerned.
Oh, Ramius tells the doctor, we'll just vent the open air. It's totally
no,
fine.
Captain, no, you cannot do that. We have to evacuate.
I feel like I can't even say it, but he just goes, Captain.
Captain. Borodin is like, Captain, I'm afraid the doctor's right. Like, we all have to evacuate. So the captain's like, all right, you've convinced me. You've sold me. Great. So the entire ship, they evacuate into life rafts. They go up to the surface and they get all the men into life rafts on the top of the boat.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, well, we'll just hang out here until we can be rescued by, of course, our own Navy.
Of course.
And then
Mm-hmm.
they see the American ship coming, which, of course, Ryan and the crew of the Dallas have told the captain, have told Ramius exactly where to be, and they're sending the Marines, literally sending the Marines. So the Russians are like, shit, the Americans are coming. Oh, and they're flashing Morse code at them, saying like, we'll sink you or whatever.
No, they just say prepare to be boarded.
Prepare to be boarded.
Yeah.
So of course, Ramius, as a good Soviet submarine captain, knows his duty,
Mm-hmm.
which he cannot let the Red October get into the hands of the Americans because it has this proprietary technology.
Mm-hmm.
And so he says to you're going to play the doctor.
Okay.
You play the doctor in this recreation.
Uh-huh.
Doctor, it's your responsibility to get the men onto the rafts for them to be rescued. The officers and I will go below decks and scuttle the ship.
You'll receive the Order of Lenin for this, Captain.
It's so good. He's in tears.
It's so dramatic. Petrov is a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
He's delightful. So then a whole bunch of things happen. now all of the Russians are just floating in their boats. The Red October has gone down, and this is where the plan kicks in. A missile is fired from the boat at the Red October because it is now trying to escape.
Yes.
And suddenly the missile explodes right before it hits it.
Yes.
And you see that it's exploded because Greer is on the boat with Skip Tyler,
physically pressing the button to make the missile stop.
And he says to the guy running the console, you heard it hit the hull, you heard the ship sink, and I was never here.
And I want to be clear, the guy running the console, whose name is not Reuben James.
Yes, he says, Red October, this is Reuben James.
There's this amazing moment he picks up the phone, because I was keeping a list. The reason that this was important was because I was keeping a list of the names of the characters, and sometimes it was hard to understand what their names were. And so he picks up physically a phone and says, Red October, this is Reuben James. And I went, Reuben James. And I started to write it down. And then I was like, wait a second. There is no way that this man at like Missile Launch Command is picking up the phone like I would and saying like, hello, big law firm. This is Arielle Lipshaw speaking. Like that would not happen.
Right.
Reuben James is clearly the name of the boat.
Now, the plan as far as the Americans goes great.
Yeah.
They've convinced the Russians that the ship has been sunk and they're all very sad. And then a tiny little mini sub goes from the Dallas to the Red October carrying Ryan and Mancuso and Jonesy.
Who's along for the ride.
Which is
There's
most...
no reason for Jonesy to be there.
It is the most Star Trek thing of this entire movie. Because, of course, if Picard is going down to the surface, he's taking Data with him.
Yeah.
Like, of course he is.
But they do leave Thompson on the boat to command the boat.
Yes. Thompson's back there. Cobb is back there.
And Thompson does a really good job.
Oh, he's a very good captain.
He does some stuff later that's, like, very good.
So they're on the boat, and they have this great first meeting with the Russian crew. How about this meeting where Ryan meets all the Russians for the first time?
It's so good.
It's amazing and tense and funny. And suddenly they go back. Now the Russians are speaking in Russian again because now they're around Americans.
Right, of course.
And then Ramius starts talking in English. This is where his whole Scottish accent really, I think, it risks scuttling the movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I don't think it does. Do you think it does?
No, but of all the places in the movie where you might need to suspend disbelief, and this is a crazy movie, so there are a lot of them, the fact that the Russian submarine captain speaks English with a strong Scottish accent, not believable. Very strange.
Yep. Definitely a bunch.
Yeah.
And now suddenly, like, it really becomes apparent that some of the Russian officers have very thick Russian accents, and he does not.
No.
It is very apparent.
Maybe he learned English from a Scotsman.
And then we get, I think, the funniest moment in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Because suddenly a torpedo goes past the boat.
Yes.
And Mancuso runs back to the DSRV, to the mini sub that's attached, and the pilot of the DSRV just goes, hey, I think someone's shooting a torpedo at us. It's my favorite moment in the movie.
Well, and then Mancuso screams at him like, go. And he's like, where am I supposed to go?
Now, this is where suddenly these two things happen. Because in the book, this is one scene. Them reaching the Red October, meeting all of the crew, and then having a fight with the cook who's still there.
Yes.
That's one part.
Yes.
And that's all done.
Yes.
Do you want to spoil it? How does that end for the cook?
Dead.
Yep.
Dead. And
super quick, simple death?
Okay. No, very long drawn out. Okay, so here's the list of casualties. The captain is shot in the leg.
Yep.
But not killed.
Right.
Borden is super dead. I think someone else might be
in the book?
Yeah.
Oh, is Borden gets shot in the book?
Yeah, he's dead.
Okay, cool.
Super dead.
Yep.
I think someone else might be, and then there's something we have not mentioned and will only mention right now briefly. The British are involved in this as well.
Oh my God, yeah, the British are there.
So there's a British officer that's also wounded badly.
Yep.
And Jack, I think, is shot in the shoulder. It doesn't matter, and the spy is dead. He is deceased.
And like the spy dies, and they have this big dialogue to each other, and it's very heightened.
Doesn't matter.
And then he dies, and as he dies, his soul is leaving his body, and Ryan is thinking about life and death and all this kind of stuff. And in the movie, it's a gunfight.
he's literally about to like put two cables together to explode the ship, and Ryan shoots him a bunch of times.
Yep.
But not before he does his second impression of the movie, which is to mock Ramius using a Scottish accent.
Yep. Now, and then in the book, this all finishes up, and now the U.S. Navy has the Red October.
And there are a huge chunk of just the American. Literally, this is what 50 pages of this book are about: the Americans teaching the Russians about American culture.
Yep.
They get to watch TV, they get to eat food, they get to listen to the radio, they learn both the officers on the sub, and we learn the enlisted men who have been taken on a tour of Washington, D.C., have lots of information that they did not have before.
Now I have a question for you.
Yes.
Because this is like a famous, like, quote unquote techno thriller.
Yeah?
All of these pages you're describing are tense, right?
No.
No?
No.
No tension?
There's none.
None whatsoever?
None.
Oh.
No.
My goodness.
No, this is the end of the book, and instead of just wrapping everything up or going on to the next tense thing, it is like just a lot of character development, but it's too late. You can't have character development in the last 50 pages.
It's not even character development, it's just plot.
Just plot.
It's
Just
all it is.
Nonsense plot.
And then we get the real kind of end of the book,
Yes.
which is that the Kanavalov has found the Red October, and now they've engaged in an undersea battle.
Yes.
And that's what's happening at the movie at the same time as fighting the cook.
Yes.
Which is brilliant. It blew my mind that these were two separate events in the book.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Because they're so tied together in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that struck me on this viewing that I found really interesting was that, there's 3 subs involved in this battle. There's the Red October, the other Russian sub that Tupolev
The Kanavalov,
and the Dallas. And the thing that I thought was really interesting was the Red October is being captained by 2 captains, because you've got Ramius, but you've also got Mancuso, who are kind of fighting over it a little bit.
Yeah, Kirk and Picard are both on the Enterprise.
Right. But the thing that I thought was really interesting is that they each have a great insight into what the other sub is going to do, because Ramius, we understand, trained Tupolev, and he knows him really well. And of course, Mancuso knows what Thompson is going to do because it's his boat, so he knows what he would do in the same circumstance. So the fact that the two of them had this insight, both of them, into either their ally or their enemy, was really, really interesting to me, because of course they couldn't really communicate with the Dallas at all.
No, not really.
Not back and forth. I think in the book they actually could, but it doesn't matter.
They just weren't, because everything was so crazy.
It was happening so fast.
Yeah, there's a really annoying part in the book where, so there's this scene where the Kanavalov fires a torpedo at the Red October, and what they do is the Red October actually turns into the torpedo's path and races towards it. So basically it hits the torpedo before the torpedo can arm itself, and it just breaks apart and they're fine.
Right.
And in the movie, it's this great moment where Ramius knows what to do, and Mancuso's telling Ryan, like, who's piloting the boat.
For some reason.
It's great. He's telling him, don't do what he's telling you. That's crazy. We're going at the torpedo. So it's this great fight between them, and you get to see how good Ramius is. In the book, that same thing happens, but basically Ramius and Mancuso look at each other and have this telepathic link, and they both know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
So there's tension because of the external forces, but there's no internal tension with the characters.
Right.
So all of this is happening. So Ramius gets his moment, and then the unthinkable happens.
Yeah.
The cook shows up and he shoots Borodin.
Yeah.
And we get the immortal line. Can we get a dramatic reenactment, sweetie?
Yes. I would like to have seen Montana.
And then I cry.
Yeah.
And then you cry, and everyone cries. And Sam Neill dies.
Yes.
It's very, very sad.
It's very sad.
And then we get action scene, and Ramius and Ryan go after the cook, and Mancuso stays to pilot. So basically, it's Ryan and Ramius versus the cook, and Mancuso and Jonesy and the Russians versus the Kanavalov.
Yes.
And so we get all this different stuff.
It's very tense, very tense.
And then the cook is dead at this point, and they come back, but now Mancuso gets his time to shine, because the Kanavalov fires their torpedo, and at the Red October, and the Dallas goes in between to get the torpedo off its path, and it has to do a bunch of stuff. And then at one point, the torpedo is coming at the Red October, and it's playing chicken with the Kanavalov.
Yes.
And Mancuso gets to be American.
Yes.
And gets to say, this is how you play chicken.
And then it turns back around and goes into the Kanavalov, because they lost the game of chicken.
Right.
And we have the famous line,
You arrogant ass, you've killed us.
And then the Kanavalov explodes. And of course, on the surface, all of the Russians who are standing and cheering and eating sandwiches and drinking coffee on board ship think it is the Red October, because
Right.
nobody on the surface knows that there are 2 Russian subs.
Right,
they think
exactly.
there's just the one.
And at this point, the Dallas has breached the water,
Yeah.
so they know the Dallas is above water now.
Yeah.
They know it's on the surface, so the only other thing that could be under the surface is the Red October.
That's right.
And it's very sad.
Yes.
And they all take their hats off.
Yeah, it's very sad.
And Petrov is so sad.
He's so sad, but he's an idiot, so it's okay.
And then there's literally like 2 more scenes.
Yeah.
Or 3. One doesn't really count.
Yeah.
Because we go back and we get our 3rd scene with Pelt and Andre.
Yes.
And we get to find out that the governments have kind of all, basically, the Russians don't know that the U.S. has the Red October.
Mm-hmm.
They believe the Red October has been sunk.
Yes.
And this is the point where Andre has to tell him, so we're missing another submarine. And it's very funny.
Yeah. And there's a lot of bullshit in the book that there's like, they're literally introducing new characters on page 400.
Yeah.
There's these guys that go down in the 3-man sub to look at the wreckage with a Russian and a British and an American guy, and they've planted evidence from the Red October so that they can see it and to think like, oh, it is the Red October. It comes to nothing. It's not important. It's dumb.
Like,
it's dumb.
I want to make it clear, there are so many plot points that we have not discussed.
Yeah, so
many.
many.
We can't.
No.
There's too many.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And then we get basically the final scene of the movie.
Yes.
Which frustrates me because
the green screen is the worst I've ever seen.
It is awful. It is just abysmal. But the acting and the dialogue is great.
Fantastic.
And it's just Ryan. They're in the Penobscot River up in Maine, which, represent. And it's just Ryan and Ramius talking to each other about...
With their heads sticking out of the top of the submarine, to be clear.
Yes. Yeah. They're up on the top. The submarine has surfaced. It's the middle of the night. And they have this great conversation, and it's almost completely undermined by the fact that, as you say, it is some of the worst effects. It's the worst compositing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like you can see the land through Alec Baldwin's head.
Yeah.
It's very, very bad. And put that aside.
Okay.
They have this dialogue about kind of what things are going to be like, and they start to learn about each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they both learn that they each love to fish.
Mm-hmm.
And they both had really good both of their grandfathers taught them to fish.
Oh, good.
Because, like, in the book, Ryan's telling Ramius, you're welcome at my house whenever you want.
Yeah.
And in the movie, they never say anything that overt.
No.
But you do get the sense that these 2 characters understand each other.
Yes.
And
understand each other.
Understand each other. They've made a relationship.
Yes.
I guess that's already a sh sound.
On a speedboat.
On a speedboat. And then Ramius has this great line. Ramius is looking off into the distance, and he just says,
"And the sea will grant each man new hope, as sleep brings dreams of home." Christopher Columbus.
Welcome to the New World, sir.
it's great.
It's the end of the movie.
I learned something.
Yeah?
Christopher Columbus never said that.
I didn't think so. I cannot imagine we have a lot of quotes directly from Christopher Columbus.
Like, never wrote that, completely made up. Larry Ferguson, the screenwriter, wrote that. Quick sidebar about Larry Ferguson. His name in the movie is Ferguson. We know that because it's on his name tag.
Great.
So he's the Cobb, but his name is Ferguson.
So we have our little final scene.
And then finally, and this is actually interesting because the movie and the book end in exactly the same way.
Yes. Ryan gets on the plane to go home to his family. He
Mhm.
has the Christmas present for his child. And he, for the first time in his life, falls asleep on an airplane.
Yep.
Because he has not slept in like 72 hours.
That's another thing too. So now we're done with the story. I don't have a whole bunch of things to talk about at this
No,
point.
I think we did it as we went.
But like one big thing I want to say, the time that the movie takes place in versus the book, like how much time would you say elapses from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie?
It's like 3 or 4 days.
And in the book, how many days does this take place over?
Oh, well, it's very clear because every chapter is a day. It's 18 days.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, too, is that Tom Clancy is really obsessed with bodily functions. So So if you're the kind of person that worries about like, when are these people sleeping? When are they eating? When are they peeing? When are they pooping? When are they shaving? This is the book for you, because he will tell you every single time.
Totally.
Whereas in the movie, it's just kind of taken as read that like maybe he will grab a few hours sleep or a snack at some point, but it is not important to the plot.
Like, I feel like that's kind of a classic thing when you're a kid going, like, someone points out to you, hey, when was the last time you saw someone poop in an action movie? And you go, oh my God, yeah, when did they do it? But then you get over it because you realize that's not important.
Right.
Not to Tom Clancy.
No, there's literally a scene where it's like Ryan's piloting the ship and everything's calm. And it's like, Ryan realized he had to pee. And then he got up and he said, hey, could someone take over for a second? And the captain comes over and is like, hey, yeah, you need to pee? He's like, yeah, I need to pee. And he goes off. And then 2 minutes later, he feels better. It's like, yeah, that's what peeing is like. Yeah, you have to pee and then you feel better.
And then literally a couple of pages later, when they're deep in like a naval battle, the line goes through Ryan. The line is in the book, Ryan was really glad he peed before. Oh, man. I hated this book.
It was so hard to get through. I had to read it in like 10-page chunks. I like had to keep stopping. It was really hard to get through.
I think
it was so boring.
I just think the big difference between the book and the movie for me is that the book is all about plot. It doesn't really give a shit about character.
Yeah.
Like, characters are just presented as everyone's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, Clancy goes out of his way to tell you how intelligent and capable everyone is in every scenario. Whereas in the movie, they're characters and they have flaws and they have limitations. And you actually, because there's so many fewer of them, you get to know all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when Borodin dies, it's really sad.
Yeah, and also because we only have to distinguish Borodin from maybe 6 or 7 other characters. In the movie, Borodin is one of 105 people that we're supposed to somehow care about.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible. You cannot care about that many people.
Yeah, a bunch of people die over the course of the book, and you just don't give a shit.
No.
You don't care about any of them. It really, really makes me sad.
So you hated this book. Should we talk about the movie in terms of our quadrants?
Yeah, definitely. I think I was fully prepared to come into this because all I really knew about was how Larry Ferguson, the screenwriter, felt about it.
Yeah.
And I knew he did not care for the book.
Right.
Didn't care for it. He basically wrote a draft of the movie where he threw almost everything out.
Yeah.
Gave it to John McTiernan, and McTiernan said to him, no, it's not enough like the book. We got to do what the book does.
Mm-hmm.
It actually sounds like McTiernan cared about the book.
Yeah.
But Larry Ferguson didn't.
But maybe that's a good combination when you're working with a book that's objectively not good.
Yeah. I think for this one, in terms of caring, I think we got to put it on the line.
Okay.
Because they clearly are the two creative forces behind it, and they disagreed about it.
Okay, fair enough.
So I want to put it on the line.
Yes.
Was it successful?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a really good movie.
Why is it successful?
I don't know. I just think there's a lot of tension. It's interesting. I mean, I certainly, for me, not being someone who's a big fan of like war movies or submarine movies or anything like that, like it's definitely the kind of thing that I have had to watch quite a few times. Now, at this point, I'm pretty clear what's happening at any given time. That was not true the first 2 or 3 times I saw it. But it is an enjoyable movie. For me, the things that I like are not like the big battles or the, really suspenseful moments. The things that I like are like the really good little character moments, like all the stuff with the doctor and the stuff with James Earl Jones and the stuff with the Russian ambassador, like all the stuff that's really good, interesting characterization. I really like and respond to that. Whereas I think someone else might be more into sort of like the really dramatic battles, but it's got something for everyone.
Yeah,
you don't want women in your movies, it's got something for everyone.
Yeah. I was going to say it's got something for everyone in more of a limited sense.
Yeah.
It's got stuff for lots of people.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I feel like on every rewatch, you can kind of focus on something else if you want to.
Yeah.
Like this time that we were watching it, I feel like we rewound it more than any other time because like I would say, did you see what James Earl Jones just did? And you're like, no, rewind it.
Yeah, you would say like, did you see what his face just did? Did you see like he just put his hand on his arm? Did you see that? Little things like that.
I just think from a cinematic perspective, it's just perfectly constructed.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why I've always loved this movie so much, because it's not because I care about the Cold War.
Yeah.
Like if it's interesting, I don't, but it's not a passion point for me.
Sure.
But I just love how this movie is constructed. I think it's amazing. And I think the performances are incredible. It's great.
Cool.
So I think this is like an upper middle movie.
Yeah.
Right there on the line.
Cool.
But definitely good.
Awesome.
Got anything else to say about this movie?
I think that's it. I think we cracked it.
Well, then this has been another episode of Adapt or Perish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. And if you tweet about the show, don't forget to use the AdaptCast hashtag. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads. You can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adaptorperishcast@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the show, there are 2 great ways you can do it. We say this all the time. Tell a friend. Tell people about it. Don't keep it to yourselves. Don't hog it. There's plenty of Adapt or Perish to go around. Second, we say this all the time, a rating and review. Any kind of, just really quick, it doesn't take very long to go over to Apple Podcasts and leave a quick little review. We hope that the review is that this is good, but really anything is good.
Absolutely.
It would be greatly appreciated.
By both us and Ramesh. Marco Ramesh.
It's very good because of the guy he played. It's very Merry Christmas, everybody.
Bye.